My apologies about this. I'm delighted to have all of you being with us today. I know that it's getting close to the holidays and everybody is busy, so that makes it extra special that you took the time for our 6th and last workshop in our A2i, or Accelerate to Industry series of workshops and job searches. And today I'm really, really excited to actually have somebody from Ohio State with us. We have Ryan Wilhelm with us, and he is from, I want to make sure I'm not saying this wrong, the Career Counseling and Support Services Office of Student Life. And I think since we have been learning a lot about the various industry companies, we have learned about job possibilities that they have, internship possibilities that are available. We wanted to make sure that now you're going to get the nuts and bolts in regards to how do you deal with putting together your cover letter? How do you deal with putting together your resume? And Ryan is an expert in that, so he will walk you through the whole process. And I think I'm just going to turn it over to Ryan so that he can walk us through all of these things that I listed and many more things. Ryan?
Thank you very much. I appreciate the introduction. I first will just kind of talk about our services and what we do. So we're with Career Counseling and Support Services on campus. We help anybody from freshmen who first walked into campus to postdocs with essentially 3 main things. We are doing those things over Zoom now. So just due to the pandemic, all that, just to make sure that we're as safe as possible. Those three things, I like to think about them across the continuum. From on the far left-hand side would be more of the concrete stuff like resumes, what we'll talk about today, cover letters, what we'll talk about today, interviewing. We help with applying to graduate school. I'm betting that many of you are not going to be applying to graduate school again. You've already been successful in that way anyway. So, but we could help with any of that stuff. The middle thing that we do is career exploration. So if you're not sure what you want to do when you're done, if you want to go, if you're still debating between academia and industry, if you're thinking about, going in a totally different field, if there's if you're in between a few things, we can help with that as well. Typically what we do for that is we look at, we just have conversations and kind of process through it. We look at your values, personality. We've been exploring a lot more of like the challenges that you want to solve in the world, those kind of things. We try to come up with the elements of what you really want out of a job, and then try to connect those to the options that you're considering. Then the final thing we do is career counseling. So we do, we can work with students one-on-one for the barriers that are in the way as they go towards their career. So if you're, if you figured out where you wanted to go, if you feel confident about your stuff to get there, your resume, all that, but there's something still in the way, oftentimes it's imposter syndrome, fear, self-doubt, all that. We can help with that process as well. I'm a licensed therapist, and much of the staff at our office is from the same background or similar background as well. So those are the 3 main things we do. Again, open to everybody. It is a question that I always get: is it free? It's not. I mean, it's technically free, but it's one of those things that it's somewhere embedded in your fees at some point, right? So you don't have to pay anything extra typically. So today what we're going to talk about is tailoring your resume. We're going to dive right in, and like Karen had said, if you've got questions, feel free to throw them out. The main thing that we want to start out with is that we want to make sure that your resume is tailored, right? And the first step of that is to really determine the job target and then start thinking like the person who will be receiving your resume. Thinking about what's needed for that particular position that you're looking for. It could be that you are fed up with academia and research and you're like, I want to go back to school and I want to be a lifeguard, right? Or I'm sorry, I want to get out of school and I want to go be a lifeguard. Great. So what do you need for that? You want to be a consultant, you want to be an instructor, you want to do research, right? Doesn't matter what it is. We want to make sure we're targeting that specific position and we're not just having one resume that we create and then just send out to everybody. One of the first things I always tell people is to, when they first start applying for jobs, pretend like every time they're applying for a job that they have to tear up their resume and start from scratch. You shouldn't actually start from scratch every time, but if you pretend that that's the case, it'll make sure that everything's targeted for each one. When you apply for anything, there'll typically be 3 main, I'm fighting a cough, so I apologize. When you apply for anything, there's typically going to be three main things that people will want you to have, right? That they're going to look for to either hire you or accept you into a program or whatever it is. First is, do you have the skills to succeed in that role, right? And if it was graduate school, do you have the skills to succeed as a graduate student? Do you have the skills to succeed where that degree is going to take you? If it's a job, do you have the skills to succeed in that job? Second thing is passion. Do you really want to do that work, right? So we've seen the economy certainly fluctuate and bounce around right now and go down. So a lot of people are applying for jobs that they don't necessarily want because the jobs just aren't out there, right? So being able to show that that's something you're really passionate about is important. And then finally, fit. So are you going to fit with this particular organization? Are you going to be a good match? Those are the three things to really think about. When it comes to your resume, pretty much skills is the only thing that we really worry about there, right? We're just trying to check off boxes. The passion and fit box and the skills box, those will come in your cover letter and then certainly in your interview. But where to start? We want you to essentially just make a grid, right? And think about what is that job looking for. So most jobs, not all jobs, but most jobs will have a good list of everything that they're looking for in a candidate. And it'll be broken down into three different ways. The first way, it'll say, these are the requirements that you need to be able to do this job. This is often something where people will see this and then they will kind of disqualify themselves. And we want you to avoid that, right? We want you to think about this as actually having two layers. So like a concrete requirement layer and then a requirement layer that's not super concrete, right? So we talked about lifeguard earlier, and that's my favorite example to use because it's just so clean cut. If we think about it, if you were applying to be a lifeguard, there are essentially those two layers, right? There's a layer of these very, very concrete things that every lifeguard has to have. You know, we need you to be able to swim. We need you to be able to know CPR. We're not hiring anybody to do that job who does not have those skills. But in that job posting, it may also say you need 3 years of experience. That's not going to be a requirement, right? Even though it says a requirement, if the everybody, you know, there's 37 people on the Zoom call, right? So if all of us had 2 years of experience and they really wanted to hire somebody, and we could all swim and we all knew CPR, they're going to hire one of us, right? So a lot of times people will disqualify themselves before they even, you know, get into the pool because they don't check off every box. Try to remember that you are trying to be the best candidate or one of the best candidates that's applying, not the perfect candidate. You don't have to check off every box. You just have to check off more boxes than me and the 36 other people on the Zoom call, right? Next thing is preferred qualifications. That's stuff they would love for you to have, but they certainly don't expect everyone to have. It's not an expectation. Sometimes for our, you know, you'll see a PhD in a specific field, or you'll see, you know, we would love for you to have a PhD, but you have a master's, that's okay. And so that will be on there. And then the last thing is just the job duties, right? What you will actually do on the job. When we think about that one, it's okay for that to be an entire projection. It's okay if you've never done that work before in your life, right? And all you're doing is taking experiences from the past and trying to show that you can do that. My favorite example of this is if it was like a management position and you hadn't had any management experience in the past, right? But you wanted to show that you had the ability to do that management job. So what we can do is we can break that down and we can think about your favorite leaders you've had in the past. Who have been your favorite supervisors? Who have been your favorite trainers, your favorite professors, your favorite PIs, your favorite advisors, right? All that. And think about what are the traits that made them great. A few that stand out to me are things like organization, communication, empathy, you know, all of those things, right? So if we think about those elements that make up a great manager, you can probably speak to experiences that show off those elements that you've done, even if you can't speak to actually having experience leading, right? So, and that's just an easy example, but that can be broadened for sure for other things you're looking at. So I suggest, excuse me, as you're applying for these things, the first step you do is you make a chart, Column A will be all that stuff that's in the job posting. So I suggest using like an Excel spreadsheet, so that what you can do is take column A, take sheet A, and that's the first job you're applying for. And then you take column A and you list everything that they're looking for. Column B will just be those things that you bring to the table that you're trying to show off. When it comes to applying for the next job, then you can just open another sheet and you can essentially just copy over. You won't copy over the requirements, the preferred qualifications, or the job duties, but you will copy over the things that you've done to check off those boxes. And then you're just kind of finding places to put those. And you may have to add some for sure, but it just makes it really easy, much easier to apply for these jobs. So here's just an example of what you might do, right? So you essentially have these boxes that you're trying to check off. And in one side, we've got those skills that they're looking for. And on the other side, we have the skills that you check off, what you bring to the table. One of the biggest things, especially for grad students, that I want you to remember is that transferable skills are going to be huge. I've worked with a lot of graduate students who they see, friends who have very, very technical or very specific degrees, and they have a broader degree and they feel a little bit behind, right? But skills, we want to remember that those boxes just need checked off, but they can be checked off anywhere, right? So it could be something paid, unpaid, it could be research, volunteering, it could be classes you've taken and projects you've done within those classes, right? Anything is okay, right? As long as you're checking off those boxes, that's fine. One of the biggest things that I want to, and I think I talk about this more than once, is we don't want you to downplay your research. I've worked with a lot of students who they'll be graduating, they're going to apply for a job, and they don't even have their dissertation on their resume. And I don't know why it happens, but it happens probably more than 50% of the time. And it's just a giant gap because they've been doing this for 4, 5, 6, 7 years, and they don't have anything on there about it. So we make sure that even though you might not be asking the same questions in your next position, but your dissertation and those things can show skill sets for sure. So just in general, there's a good website. Let me see if I can switch my share real quick. Sometimes it allows me to do it, sometimes it doesn't. So there's a good website here on our page. If you go to what can I do with a major in, and if you just go to the website here for it's from University Exploration. They have all of the undergraduate majors at OSU. So they're all undergraduate. So you'd have to kind of transfer it and try to find kind of your equivalent there. But they do a good job of having transferable skills attached to these. And a lot of times when I'm working with graduate students, we will look at that as thinking about the other things that we've developed, right? So just clicked on biology. They do have a great list of, some jobs that might be out there. This is not a comprehensive list. You can do all kinds of other stuff, but they have got a great, great list of what are the skills that you're bringing to the table that you may not have thought about or that you might be downplaying. And that part can be pretty helpful in terms of thinking about the skills that you're bringing. Okay, so just some general skills: leadership, teamwork, initiative. Those come up very often. If I was in a classroom setting, we might go back and talk about high school and all that, and the skills you develop, but these are some very, very common ones. Sometimes people will tell me, I don't believe employers really want that, right? So I have an older study, but there's been newer studies. This one just makes my argument better, so I just leave this one in. But the National Association of Colleges of Employers asked 100 employers what were some of the skills that they really wanted to get out of candidates, right? And the newer ones reflect this exact same thing. And what they wanted and what they weren't getting from candidates is ability to work in a team structure, ability to make decisions and solve problems, ability to plan, organize, and prioritize work, and ability to verbally communicate with persons inside and outside of the organization. So when you're coming up and when you're writing out your resume and thinking about your argument as to why you should be hired from these people, a lot of times people will just leave these types of things off of their research, of their experiences, all that. And these things are very important, and you are 100% getting these during your graduate experience, right? So you are, that's why when you were taking classes, you're working in a team structure. That's why when you're doing research, you're working on interdisciplinary teams, right? Make decisions, solve problems, organize and prioritize work. I know a lot of PhDs, some of their frustration is when they first start trying to plan out the timeline of that dissertation, and they don't have someone helping them with that structure, right? And so being able to just create that structure and get to the lab when you need to get to the lab, get to your teaching assignments when you need to get there. That stuff is really important. And finally, just ability to verbally communicate with persons inside and outside the organization. If you've taught a class, if you presented at a conference, if you've, even just kind of defending your thesis or your dissertation or, those kind of things, those are all teaching you those skills. One of the things that I think is vital when we're thinking about your CV and cutting it down from the, one of the things we didn't talk about, which I should have talked about, is when to use the CV and when to use a resume. So, so typically we're going to use a resume whenever we're applying to industry, right? And I guess academia, if you're applying to a non-research teaching job, you could use that, right? Sometimes you will use your CV in industry if that is something that field will, if that's the standard, right? So if everybody you're applying to, if everyone who's going to interview you has a PhD, sometimes they will just say, send in your CV, right? But typically we're going to have to take that CV that you've created that might be, 5, 6, 7, 10 pages, and we're going to have to chop it down. And we'll talk about that, but it's typically going to be about 2 pages at most, right? So you're going to have to take a bunch of information and chop it down. So one of the ways to think about this is thinking about it with those very, very targeted skills, right? So you may have all these skills, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These might all exist. And on your CV, you might be able to, you have an endless amount of pages to list them. But on your resume, you have to be much more targeted. So these skills don't go away. But job A only cares about 1, 2, and 3. And job B only cares about 1, 4, and 5. And job C only cares about 1, 2, and 6. I have no idea what job that would be. I just thought it'd be fun to have a swimming in there at the end. But those are, so those skills don't go away, but you may downplay it. You may have less detail about the things that are crossed out there. You may take them off entirely because they don't fit on the 2 pages. But that doesn't mean that you don't have those skills. One of the hardest things typically is taking that document and shrinking it to 7 pages, but hopefully this idea helps. Excuse me. So before you start, what you're going to do, you're going to have one column that just is focused on what they're seeking, and then one column that's focused on what you're offering, and you're just going to try to make those connections. Now we're going to dive into some much more kind of in the weeds, kind of very, very specific things with when it comes to creating that actual resume. So, number 1, write your own resume. So I edit these daily. So, and one of the biggest headaches is when people use a template, right? And I don't mean a template like find somebody and use it as an example. That's okay. But there's templates online where you can just punch in the information and then it will populate that resume. The problem with those is that the point of you creating a resume is for you to get a job, and that job will then be added to that resume. And often what happens is it puts that content in blocks or boxes that are much harder to move around. So I would suggest, just doing it on your own and just doing it in a Word document, keeping it simple, all that. So simple, readable font, don't get too carried away with the font. Make sure you proofread and look for grammar and punctuation. I literally was looking at someone's resume and they happened to be from the same hometown as my wife, and their last name was the street that my wife grew up on. And I realized that they misspelled their last name. So that is not a good way to say I have good attention to detail by misspelling your last name. 10, 11 point font. Aim for 1 or 2 pages. So whatever they ask for. Some places may ask for 1 page. It's not going to be typical that they expect someone with a PhD or a master's to get it to one page, but they may. But I would default. It's recruiters just don't care anymore. They can stop at 1 page, right? They're able to stop reading. It's all electronic, right? So it doesn't take up anything typically, right? So, but if they demand 1 page, go for it. But typically, it'll be okay to go to 2 pages. The name should be on the 2nd page somewhere. So I typically suggest just having your email address, and your email address that you use should have your name in it on that 2nd page. If you're in the middle of talking about an experience and it jumps to the next page, try to keep those all on one page and get to at least a page and a half. This should not be a problem for anybody here. But if it is, try to make sure that you are getting to that, at least halfway down the page. We don't just want a little bit on the second page. Just some more general stuff. So we want a crisp and balanced uniform format. So not too much white space, not too much filled space. I've got a couple of examples here, and neither's perfect. This is our resume packet that I'll make sure gets sent out. That's got a couple examples here, but you can see the white space and then the, kind of how it's filled up, right? Keyword search. So if you're applying for a large company, keep in mind that they are going to, the first thing that reads your resume is typically going to be a computer algorithm. So you want to make sure that you're looking at that job posting and connecting as much as possible to the words that they're using. If you wrote the word instruct, excuse me, and they wrote the word train, try to switch that so that you write the word train, right? Because that computer, probably they're going to find it, but maybe not. And you want to make sure you're going, you're getting past that computer stage to the human stage of actually looking. So easy to get to information. Don't hide it with creativity, color, pictures, all that. Remember that they're going to read from top to bottom and left to right. So the most important stuff is near the top. The most important stuff is on the left. Stuff we don't have, well, we'll get to that actually. So just in general, so the first thing you'll have is your identifying information. The name is probably going to be the most important, the largest thing on the page. It's if you have a maiden name or you go by a different name, feel free to throw those into your in parentheses and put them in there as well if you want. Present or permanent address. Typically on your CV, you're going to use your office address. Typically on your resume, you'll use your home address. But we're seeing a large shift to where you don't need to put your address at all, or you just put like Columbus, Ohio, and that's it. There's going to be an application process typically where you'll fill out your address. They're not going to write you a letter. They're going to call you or email you first, right? So they're not going to, eventually they'll want your address, but you don't necessarily need that on your resume. So you can do one of three things. Hopefully that was clear. You can have your full address, you can have just Columbus, Ohio, or wherever you're from, or you can have nothing, and that's okay. I skipped the targeted part. I want to hit on that too. So let's say you were from Chicago, you're moving back to Chicago, you want to seem as accessible as possible for interviews. You can go ahead and put like your family's address or something like that. That's perfectly fine. Typically for your level, this won't matter as much because they're going to fly you in anyway. But sometimes it really matters for these things because they are, you might be on the fringe and they're, they might not have the funds to fly everybody in. Again, also might not matter because of Zoom and all that, but we'll see where that all goes. So the next thing to have for sure is your phone number. Make sure you update your voicemail. Make sure it's a professional welcome. So something like, hi, this is Ryan Wilhelm. I can't get to the phone right now. Something like that. You definitely don't want just a number, and you definitely don't want, and you can have just your name. That's okay. But this is if you have a professional welcome there, that's your first professional introduction to them. I've definitely been on hiring committees where I had to call somebody and I couldn't leave a message because I wasn't 100% sure that was them. They didn't say their name. So I couldn't leave a message. They eventually got the job, we eventually got to that, but you don't want any barrier like that. Your email address, so use your OSU account or other professional looking address. You can use Gmail, whatever it is. Just don't use anything crazy. The email that you created when you were in 14 or anything like that. We've definitely seen ones that are like Princess 24 or things like that, or something connected to basketball, and that's like not a huge part of their life anymore, right? So something with your name in it is appropriate. We try to keep this down to one line if possible, because this is this is not going to get you hired. The rest of the stuff is what's going to get you hired. So we want to focus on that. And then your website or LinkedIn. A lot of people will include their LinkedIn. That's okay, but it should add something, right? It shouldn't just be just the same exact stuff that's on the resume. I've seen a lot of websites for PhDs where that directs them to their research, and I think that's great. So anything like that is great. Anything that you include to take you more to move you towards giving a greater picture, move them towards giving a greater picture of who you are is important. We don't include age, we don't include marital status, religion, any other personal information. And we've been seeing a trend for photos, but we're really wanting to push back against that. That's, the only thing that a photo can really do is potentially lead to discrimination, and we don't want to do that. So we don't suggest photos either. Sometimes this is definitely optional. Sometimes the next thing you'll have is a job objective. This is only really useful if you are trying to make an argument as to why you want to be into a field that doesn't necessarily match up with your degree, right? You are going to be labeled or you're branded by whatever they read first after your name, right? So you want to steer them in a direction that connects to what you want your brand to be. If typically that will be your education, but if that is not connected, then it's good to throw in a job objective that includes two things. The old school ones would just say like seeking a entry-level job or something like that, right? But we don't want to do that anymore. We want a job objective that includes two things. The first thing is the actual job title and the employer, and we want you to be specific as possible. So seeking a job at Ohio, seeking the career counseling position at Ohio State University, and then you add in how you will benefit them. So it would say where I can utilize my experiences doing X, Y, and Z. It's really like a very brief summary of your cover letter in some ways. Another way you can do it is just a skills summary. When I'm talking to freshmen about this, they don't have the experience to be able to make one of these, but you might. And when you're doing this, you're essentially just going to have 3 to 5 bullets highlighting how you check off those boxes that they're looking for. It might say like 4 years of experience with X research, 2 years of experience teaching, those kind of things, right? It's really answering 2 questions. How are you qualified? And then should they read the rest of the resume? I really want to hit home. Both these things are super optional. They're helpful really only if you feel like you're trying to guide them down a path that won't be obvious if your degree is the first thing listed. So on to education. What you'll have here is the name and location of the institution in reverse chronological order. The degree awarded first, typically, and then the city, and then the school first, and then the city, and then your degree awarded, and any majors or minors, right? For anticipated or actual dates of graduation, even though with a PhD, it's sometimes up in the air when you're actually done, it's okay just to put a date, and you don't have to write anticipated or anything like that. You can just say May 2022. That's okay. Everyone knows that you don't know 100% for sure that you will be done at that time if it's in the future. So that's okay. Typically, we'll only write schools where we received a degree unless you feel like it helps check off a box. You can put your dissertation title or thesis up here, but typically that will go in a research section. We'll have some more depth there. Almost always for you will not have high school, but there are times when it could make sense, right? So if you grew up in Cincinnati and you went to a really well-known school in Cincinnati and you wanted to check off that fit box, you might list your high school just to show that you've been a part of the Cincinnati community before. And then if you apply to any other city, you wouldn't include that high school. Okay? Typically it won't be on there, but sometimes it does check off that fit box. You also might not lead with education for 2 reasons. Number one, your degree has nothing to do with what you want to do. This was just a chapter in your life. You're happy you did it, but you're moving on to something totally different, and you don't feel like it's going to be super helpful. So maybe you put it at the bottom then. The second reason would be you feel like it's you're overqualified, that it doesn't that this is you want them to read the other things about you first, and then decide if you want to and then they'll fall in love with you, and then they can look at your degree and see if you're overqualified. Optional things, GPA, typically for grad students, we won't have that, but if you've had 4.0s your entire life, go ahead and throw it on there. Relevant coursework, typically not, but if it checks off a box other than that otherwise wouldn't be checked off. Go ahead and list those. Sometimes your degree isn't completely representative of the classes you've taken. So I had a student once who had a master's in social work, wanted to work with the HIV/AIDS population. At the time, we had no specific way to detail that. So that student went ahead and made a relevant courses section and listed off all those classes that he had about working with that population. Study abroads, it says optional. It's really only optional if it's up here. It should be on there somewhere. Study abroad's almost always check off that fit box because people want to talk about them. So this is one of those things that gets people talking, that can help you feel more connected to help them feel more connected to you. Honors and awards, dissertation, thesis, all that. Some of that, if you wanted to have it up top, if there's a whole bunch of them, it's going to minimize the experience section, and we don't want to do that. Your experience section is going to be the most important section for you, so we want that to come as fast as possible near the top. Here's just an example here. Again, you'll get this, but you can kind of see how it's laid out. Just make sure it's consistent. So we're going to dive into the experience section. The way that we describe this is a little bit complicated, so this may take a minute, but I think it's really, really useful to think about it this way. So when we think about the experience section, we want to think about the rule of relevance, right? So instead of just having a header that says paid experience, volunteer experience, those kind of things, right? We want to make sure that our examples have targeted headers that our resumes have targeted headers that can potentially check off the boxes for people just by briefly going through your resume. So they will often only look at your resume for 8 to 10 seconds before they decide whether or not you go into a pile here, into the good pile, or to the bad pile, or to the maybe pile, right? So we want to check off those boxes as fast as we possibly can. So instead of categorizing based on relevance or paid, not paid, instead of categorizing based on paid, not paid, we categorize based on relevance. And then the order of things is relevance first, then significance, then reverse date. So relevance will be, what's the most important thing that that you think you bring to the table that checks off a box, right? The most important box for them. Significance could be something we see a lot of students who were athletes or who were in the military or who were even in band, right? So that they couldn't have internship experiences and things like that. So you may have something like that, but that would go first. And then reverse date would be the default. So everything has the same level of relevance, then we go with the most recent to the least recent. If everything has the same level of significance, then we go from the most recent to the least recent. And then anything, we'll skip that one. So an example here, really quick. So instead of writing experience on mine, I would put counseling experience. If I was applying to a job that was connected mainly to counseling, I put counseling experience. But I might put, if I was applying to a job that had career counseling as the focus, I might be even more specific and put career counseling experience. I've worked at a bunch of higher education jobs that weren't career counseling or counseling, so I might put higher education experience. If I was in the military, I might put that, leadership experience, so on and so forth. And you can have specific and broad. So if you were applying, if you had a bunch of research experience and you had a specific thing that you wanted to show off about your research, you may be very specific about that. So maybe I say career counseling research experience. And then I have a bunch of experiences that in research that aren't connected to that exactly. So I might just say additional research experience. Or I might just have a catch-all at the end that just says additional experience. And it's got a bunch of the things that I've done where I've got paid. See really quick. Just an example here again. So this one here, Brutus Buckeye has those broader headers, that relevant experience and that work experience. But you can see if you go through Jermaine Thompson's, right away, check, he's got financial analysis experience. Check, he's done customer service, right? I'm probably going to read this financial analysis piece just because it's the most connected to this job. I may not read any of these bullets here, although he needs them, because I've been to a bank. I know what a customer service person typically does at a bank. I've eaten pizza. I know what a customer service person typically does at a pizza shop, right? So those are things that you can, if someone's going through it so quick, they can just say check, check, right? And the more targeted, the better. Sometimes what I've seen PhDs do with their teaching is put like training / teaching experience or communication experience or leadership experience for their teaching, because they don't deem the actual teaching, they're not going to teach exactly, but they do want to show off that they have some of those skill sets. So when they're writing up their those actual bullets within these sections, right? What you want to do is you want to start out and write down everything you did. So try to answer the question, if I didn't show up, what wouldn't have gotten done? Or what would someone else have to take over? And then think about all the knowledge, skills, abilities that you developed on the job. Try to think of accomplishments. So if maybe something wasn't going right and you step in, so what was that problem that was going on? What action did you take to try to improve it? What happened in the end? And then you're going to think back about the job posting, remembering not everything will fit, right? So we've got those two boxes, what they're seeking, what you're offering. As you're writing these up, there's a really good formula to stick with, right? So how you write the header, it really doesn't matter how you do the header for that section, as long, or that particular experience, as long as with the next experience, you have the exact same layout. So typically I like to see the name and location of employer, and so it'd be Ohio State University, Columbus, Ohio, right? And it says employer there, but that could be your internship, place where you volunteered, doesn't matter, right? And then your title next, and then dates of employment. Sometimes what I've found for people, especially in research, sometimes they're volunteering and they don't really have a title. So that you could just give yourself a title, as long as it's not something like vice president or something like that, right? You can't do that, but you can do like, research aide or something like that, right? And that could be helpful. When you start writing up the bullets, we want to stick with a formula that is action verb first, so what you did, subject next, so what you did it to, and then outcome / details, right? So often you're just going into details, and those details might include numbers. It might include, for me, it would be like diagnoses or what people present with, those kind of things, right? What we don't want you to do is list off, just say responsible for, and then just list off a whole bunch of things, right? We want those active verbs and then to lead through it. So just in general, use their words. We talked about that. Vary your words. So don't use the same verb again and again and again. Don't use personal pronouns. So don't say I did blank, right? So if instead of saying like I counsel up to 14 students per week, I would say counsel up to 14 students per week. Two things that come up very often that seem very minuscule, but they probably happen in every other person's thing, is when you're done with that bullet, either no periods or all periods, right? And you want to be consistent. It doesn't matter which way you go. And the second thing is present tense and past tense. If you've done it in the past, go ahead and put it in past tense. If you're currently doing it, put it in present tense. That happens all the time. Those are the two biggest errors I see, the most common. One of the other things is if you worked in a lab or you worked somewhere and the place is unknown, you may have to describe what it is. I typically do that at the end of the first paragraph. I'm sorry, the end of the first bullet. And I'll just say, counsel up to, 4 students per week at a small Jesuit liberal arts university or something like that, right? So I don't have to do that. I don't have to give that further explanation if I'm talking about Ohio State, but I do if I'm talking about something like Ohio Dominican, right? So not everyone, in the country will know what Ohio State is, but outside of Columbus, not everyone necessarily knows what Ohio Dominican is. Just the amount of space. So for something that is typically very relevant for you, you're going to have anywhere from 3 to 7 bullets. If it's not relevant, anywhere from 2 to 3 bullets. We don't have to have the same amount for everything. This is one of my favorite slides because I think it's very helpful with graduate students. When you are thinking about how to write these up, we want to make sure you're going into depth, right? So instead of saying conducted soil sampling, we want that depth. So sampled soil and groundwater of metropolitan and suburban areas, ensuring water quality for Ohio residents. Instead of taught biology 101, delivered over 350 hours of training independently to large group audiences ranging from 20 to 60 people per session. And then the last one there, I won't go into that one. We have some great examples here. This one is just detailing how to talk about instruction. And again, you'll get these. I'm not going to go through them all. I do want to talk about how to write up your research, since so many of you will have it. We want to think about 4 parts when you're writing up your research. Number 1, what is the goal, right? What was the purpose of your research? What questions were you trying to answer? Number 2, what were the methods and techniques to solve the question? This is often the most important part, because they don't really care. Well, they care the context of your question, but they really care about your skill set and how you would take your skill set and adapt that to their question. So detailing the techniques you used is really important. The results, sometimes this makes the story feel transferable, sometimes not, but if you also might not be there for the results. So if you're in, you may only be with a research lab for a year, and that research has been going on for 10 years, right? So that's okay. You don't necessarily have to write up the results. The last thing is soft skills. Very often people won't write those, won't include those. And that's just, mentoring and did you work with, did you help undergraduate students? Did you work on interdisciplinary teams? Things like that. That's that piece we talked about with those transferable skills earlier. So big thing, don't downplay your research, but don't get too attached to your question. A lot of times people are, they think that the only thing they're bringing to the table is in that little niche, but it could be that what you're really bringing to the table is your ability to take a research project from start to finish, from your ability to kind of reach across into other disciplines and make your project go forward. Things like that. So here's a couple examples. But again, you'll get all these, so I'm going to just fire through them real quick. Optional sections, publications, and presentations. These will be on your CV, on your resume. If there's enough space, you can do it in a couple ways. You can have a section that says selected publications and presentations and list them that way. Or at the end of your experience, if this was your dissertation, you could say work was published in 2 scholarly journals and presented at 2 national conferences, right? And that kind of does the same thing for your resume. Any additional skills you bring to the table, that's great. Advanced computer skills, advanced spoken language skills, those kind of things, that's fine. This is not where we put our soft skills, though. Our soft skills are going to be embedded in the experiences that we have. Often I'll see people put like leadership here or communication skills and things like that. We don't necessarily want to put that there. Relevant coursework, we talked about that, honors and awards, community service, volunteering, leadership, professional memberships, licenses, certifications, all of those are up to you. At the end of mine, on my resume, I have a section that just says professional development, and it's got my license, it's got my professional memberships, it's got my leadership experience. It's kind of like a catch-all at the end where I just drop a lot of that stuff. References. So on your CV, typically you will have these listed, but on your for your resume, you will have a separate sheet of paper. You do not need to put on your resume references available upon request. They will know that's coming. Typically on that sheet, you'll just have the same format of your identifying information that you have up top. And then you will go and you'll kind of list through those 3 references. Typically it'll be 3, but if however many they ask for. Same format for each one. Typically the name of the reference, phone number and email for sure. Sometimes you will have their address. Sometimes you will have your relationship, like how you're connected, that kind of thing. It's good to have a balance of academic and professional, but that really doesn't matter. Whoever can speak to your skill set the most is important. And they can be supervisors from wherever. No family members. And then make sure you're listing in the order of who you want contacted, right? So I was working just yesterday morning with a postdoc who loved their PI in their PhD and does not love their PI right now in their postdoc. So we talked about how they could go ahead and kind of reorder that. You just want to make sure that you have a good explanation in an interview about why that is the case, why you didn't list it that way. Okay, I'm going to shoot past this really quick so we can dive into the cover letter real quick. So real quick, cover letters I can talk about really quick, so we should be able to fire through. General guidelines, what it does is it tells a prospective employer what you can do for them. It's a connector, not a rehashing of the resume. So you are essentially going to take your resume and imagine that's kind of in your left hand, and then the job posting is in your right hand, and then the cover letter comes in the middle and it explains to the person at the job how you fit this job, right? It also is a good way to demonstrate your writing skills, and it 100% needs tailored to each position. If you can address it to a specific person, and when you're in academia, it can be usually 2 pages, but outside of academia and industry, typically we just say 1. Again, the same argument holds true. If you need to go to 2 pages, I don't think anyone's going to not hire you if you're the perfect candidate, but it's definitely something to aspire for. So that first page, well, I'll just go through real quick. I'll do it this way. So this is an example, and I'll make sure you guys get this. But so typically it's their address. I'm sorry, your address up here, date, their address and information, and then dear specific person. And then you'll have an intro paragraph, a couple paragraphs focused on how you check off those boxes, and then a conclusion, and then you sign it there. So the intro paragraph, this will have 4 things typically. And I'm going to tell you how to do this very, very cookie cutter. And feel free, if you're comfortable with it, you can either follow this exactly, or you can just kind of treat this like a checklist and make sure you kind of have these things in there somewhere. So the first thing is typically why you're writing. So I'm writing to apply for a specific position at a specific place. So I'm writing to apply for the career counselor position at Ohio State. The second thing we have is the resource into finding out about the opening or the organization. I typically suggest not including it if you just found it on a website. But if I told you about it and I worked in that office, or if you knew me and I happened to work in that office, and if you knew me and I couldn't even speak to your skill set, but I can speak to your personality and your fit, you can go ahead and say, you know, I've learned about the position from Ryan Wilhelm, or I've discussed what a great opportunity or what a great place CCSS is to work from Ryan Wilhelm. What that does is that allows you to sometimes leapfrog an entire process, right? So they can just walk down the hall and say, Ryan, tell me about him, right? Or and then what can happen then is I'm like, yeah, I met them at a wedding or whatever, right? And they seem great. Their personality seems great. I can't speak to their skill set, but you know, I would suggest bringing them in for an interview. That can sometimes be like that thing that propels you forward. Obviously, you have to have the skill set to be able to do the job, but the personality part is so hard to find that sometimes that name dropping of that referral, that's more of a referral than a reference, right? So that person can't speak to your skill set, but they can speak to your personality. The third thing is including where you're at today. So I'm currently a junior at Ohio State studying, you know, X, Y, and Z. I'm currently a master's student in education and human ecology studying blank, right? And then the last thing in this is your thesis. So typically that is something like, I believe that my A, B, and C make me a good fit for this position. And you will go through and you'll think about what are those things that make you stand out, that make you check off the boxes? What's the most important things? What are they looking for? And you know, what are the things that make you stand out? This is just an example here. So it's with great interest that I'm applying for the position of mechanical engineer at Nissan. I learned about the position from Kristen Hall, an engineer in your office, who highly encouraged me to apply. I'm currently a mechanical engineering major at Ohio State and expect to graduate in spring of 2017. I believe that my leadership skills combined with my experience in structural design and analysis, as well as electrical design, make me an ideal candidate for this position. Every time I get to this one, I forget that I didn't update the dates. But that is essentially what the first paragraph will look like usually. And what we don't want, and what people kind of tend to do wrong on cover letters, is we don't want this to be a brochure for wherever you're applying for. So that's what people tend to struggle with, right? They do one of two things the most that are in error. They either they talk about how great it would be to work at Google, and they talk about that for half a page, and they barely ever talk about themselves and what they bring to the table. And then the second thing that they do is they start an outline of like what makes them great, and they don't stick to that outline. So they have this last piece here that I believe my A, B, and C make me a good fit, and then they never go back to that. What we want you to do is take that A, take that B, take that C, and then you're going to go into those middle paragraphs and you're going to prove it. So you'll go through A and you'll say what you did, what you learned, and how it matches them. So you may talk about your dissertation research or your thesis, right? And then you'll go to B and you do the same thing in C. And it doesn't have to be A, B, and C. It could be A and B or A, B, C, D. That's okay. These don't all have to be individual paragraphs. They can be, they can be combined however you want to do it, but you want to use that as a guide to kind of roll through. If you can have how it relates to them, that's great. At some point, it's always good to have a shared goals section. So you do want to have a little bit about like, why it would be great to work at Google, or why it would be great to work at that company, or how you match up with their mission and vision. That can come up top. Typically, I like it a little bit lower after you've talked about yourself a little bit, and you can kind of work that out. But sometimes it works really well to talk about why you place and then what's informed that through your experiences, and that's okay as well. So, but typically it's how do you check off those boxes that they're looking for? How do you go into some depth and explain yourself? So this is an example. I'm not going to read through it. You'll get it. And this isn't the best example. That other one's a better example. So finally, really quick, just the final paragraph. Typically, I suggest about 5 sentences. The top one is just your resume is included. That's just a good way to start the last paragraph. It is not needed. If you can find a better way to, start to cordially start closing that up. Any additional skills you have. If you're fluent in Mandarin Chinese, maybe you throw that in here, right? If I had one student who was a avid scuba diver, and she wanted to go, she was applying for a marine biologist job, right? And it wasn't part of the actual criteria that they needed for that person to have, but she deemed it to be super helpful. And so she included that there as well. So that could be there as well. Something about asking for an interview. So I'd like to further discuss the job opportunity. I'd love the opportunity to meet with you just to discuss my fit for this position in person. Then how you can be reached. So your phone number and email, and to answer any questions. And then the final thing is just thanking them for their time and consideration. You don't have to do that as cookie cutter, but typically that's a good way to do it. And again, if the employer's far away and you happen to be in that area, so sometimes this comes up where like your family's there, or you're taking a trip there, more so not in non-COVID time, but you can say that and say, I'm really excited about this position. I will be in the San Francisco area from, December 15th to the 30th or something like that, right? It just makes you more accessible. That's only if that was actually going to happen, but often that kind of stuff. Okay, sorry, I kind of rushed through that at the end because I wanted to leave some time for questions. I don't have anything right after this, so I'm happy to stay a little bit and answer questions. For me, my email's right there. So if you have any questions that you want to email me, feel free. That's perfectly fine. If it's something small, I can definitely answer it that way. Otherwise, it's better to make an appointment, and you can make an appointment there at that phone number. Unfortunately, we don't have online scheduling yet. All we have is that number. So you'd call that number and go ahead and make an appointment. I know many of you don't really have a break, and so we are actually open all during break. So, and we will start getting bored. So we would love, for you to call in, make appointments, all that stuff. So things will slow down a little bit, but we'll be available all during from when the semester ends to when it picks back up.
Brian, just to let you know, if you're looking in the Q&A questions, there are questions in regards to both the PowerPoint presentation and the video, if that will be made available. You can answer it or I can answer it, so you are fine to respond to it if you would like to.
You can go ahead and answer that. That's fine.
Okay. Yes, we will make sure that after the session is over, we will get a list of everybody who has attended. And then probably not today, but in the next few days, you should get a copy of the PowerPoint. And then I know Matt will work probably next week and the following week on getting the video uploaded, along with some other information in regards to the workshops that we have hosted over the last few weeks. Oops.
Great. Yeah, I saw a question in the chat too. If we do one-on-one resume reviews, we do that as well. It said the next question is, how long typically does it take to hear back from them? I don't totally understand that question, but if you mean like when you're applying for a job, it completely varies, unfortunately, and it's even worse now during COVID, because sometimes people think they have funding and then the funding goes away or something like that, right? So I wouldn't, hope their Sometimes companies are just open and they'll just take resumes forever and they'll hire anybody who is qualified because they're just building and building and building. But typically it's usually, you send in an application, they have a deadline, takes a couple weeks to review those, and then they start an interview process.
Ryan, I'm not seeing any other question, but I'm wondering if maybe you can just spend a minute or so talking about your office availability to also help people in preparation for interviews if they might get, let's say, the opportunity to interview after they have sent in their resume and their letter, if they can do a phone interview or Zoom interview, and then also an in-person interview. What kind of services does your office provide for graduate students?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things I just pulled up is we've been doing online career workshops. So that will continue. We've been doing on Mondays job search strategy ones, on Tuesdays resumes, on Wednesdays interviewing. So those are just focused on that. When it comes to interview strategy or interviewing, we do mock interview sessions. And so if you typically what will happen is someone will come in and we'll do a 2-appointment process where in the first one we'll talk about strategies about how to make it so that you feel like you're more confident going into that, and you feel more trained. And then we'll have them come back typically the next week and we'll do the actual mock interview. I say come back, but this is all over Zoom right now. And what we need from somebody then is just the details about that job, typically the job posting, so we can shape a few questions. Typically we'll do more of the broad questions, but we'll try to shape a few questions that are specific to that job posting. One of the things to just always remember is that we're generalists, right? So we won't, if you're in a specific, very niche kind of research area, we won't necessarily be able to know whether or not your answer really made sense, but we can kind of go through the process and talk about kind of the format of that. So we can help with that process, but when we get bogged down into the specifics of the research, it's good to have someone do something similar or ask a couple of those questions anyway. Who is your colleague or your advisor or something like that who can answer those specific questions.
You do one-on-one coaching / preparation for interviewing?
Yeah, so these are just the workshops we offer. This is just one of the things we offer. But yeah, we do one-on-one appointments for any of those things that we talked about in the beginning. And sorry, I'm trying to get back to my share. So, but yeah, so we do that for interviewing. We do that for, if you're in between, we can look at your CV, we can look at your resume, we can look at both sometimes, right? We can, if you're thinking about more graduate school, look at your personal statement. We can, if you're not sure exactly where you want to land, we can help you with that process. Pretty much everything we do outside of those workshops and workshops like this are one-on-one sessions, and they're typically 50 minutes to an hour.
And they're free to students, right?
Yep, they're all free. Yep. So it's I hate to say they're free to students because it's somewhere embedded in their fees somewhere, right? But they don't ever have to pay us, right? So.
Correct. Now, there's one other question that came up, and that question is, how do I apply for a job that is not listed if I know that there will be a position becoming available?
That's a great question. So you can definitely apply for jobs that don't exist yet, but if you know the position is, will be soon available, that's where it gets a little unclear. So if you didn't know a position was available, you can always float your resume and just express your interest, right? At some places that's perfectly appropriate and that will work. Other places, so I heard when I was doing this presentation 2 years ago, someone told me that Shell, when you apply for a position at Shell, they won't let you apply for another position for an entire year, right? I haven't heard that from anywhere else. So, but in that case, you wouldn't want to just float resumes because you wouldn't, you don't want to be blacklisted for a year, right? But typically you can just float a resume if the job is not, if you have, and just, let them know who you are and introduce yourself. If you know the job is coming up, I might just wait to see that job posting. That seems like the better approach. In that instance, in that case, what I would actually suggest you do is hopefully you're all on LinkedIn. And if you're not on LinkedIn, I totally get it, because most people will say, I joined LinkedIn, but then I didn't find it useful, so I didn't do anything, right? So I'm going to show you how it can be useful really quick. So this is your profile. If you're on LinkedIn, details all the stuff that you've done. If you search The Ohio State University here, it will pull up a site. Sorry. And it's down here. You can go to alumni. And then you can search all 313,000 alumni based on where they live, where they work, what they do, and what they study, right? So let's say you knew a job was opening at Google, but you didn't know anybody. You could go to Google, and then we find the 481 people who work at Google. Let's say you wanted to move to Seattle. We find the 46 people, and let's say you were in computer engineering. And you don't have to narrow it down that far. But now you can find a bunch of people who graduated from Ohio State who are there, right? And LinkedIn is created so that, this isn't Facebook, it's not Twitter, it's not inappropriate to randomly reach out to people you don't know. This was created so you can randomly reach out to people you don't know. So let's say I wanted to reach out to Mahesh. I always look to see if they look happy. He looks happy. So you can see his background, see all the stuff he's done, right? And then you can reach out. So every part of you don't want to click message. It'll just say, give us your money. I'm sure LinkedIn's got enough money. If we just connect there and go to add a note, you can just put a note there that says, hi Mahesh, I'm a student at OSU, about to graduate, was exploring what it would be like to work at Google, and I saw your name pop up. Would you be willing to chat with me or Zoom with me about your experience working there? The reason why this stuff is so important, it's because of what we talked about before, right? That most people get hired for those three things: the skills, passion, and fit. The more people who know you before a job opens up, the more likely it is that they're thinking about you as a good fit before that job opens up, right? And if you're coming from a different degree that doesn't 100% align with that specific thing, then you might have someone in your corner who says, like, yeah, their degree is slightly not the same, or it's just a little bit different, but I talked to them and their personality seems great. They seem like they would fit the team, and they might be able to kind of be in your corner to help make that argument for you to get in. When you're reaching out to them, like if I reached out to Mahesh and I wanted to work at Google, I might say I want to work at Google, but I'm not going to say like, would you put in a good word for me, or pass along my resume. I just would try to connect with them and hope that I build this relationship where they want to do that on their own. If you ask them for those concrete things, that takes a relationship that would be more like an advisor-advisee relationship or a mentoring relationship, and it makes it more of a business relationship. And then the walls go up, and then that person's less likely to want to help you. But the more that you can reach out that way, the better. Hopefully that answered that question.
All right, I am aware of the time, and I know that grad students probably have other commitments. So we really want to thank you. Your presentation was super helpful and very informative. And as I mentioned earlier, in regards to the questions that were posted, we will make sure that your presentation is being sent out. And there you are live. Wave at folks.
Hi, everybody.
Folks certainly should access you if they have additional questions, as it is a free service in the sense that they're paying through their student fees for the service. And especially as they're getting close for a potential interview and preparation for it, so that they're feeling really prepared. So really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And thank you to all the students who made yourself available. I know this is a busy time. We hope this was helpful, and we thank you for coming today. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.